1968 was a very busy year for the U.S., with the war going on, two major figures being shot, two rockets being launched, and the civil rights movement becoming more important than ever. This was a great time for U.S. nationalism. The first event that brings attention to 1968 is that of the assassination of a dear Robert Kennedy. After midnight on June 5th, 1968, Robert F. Kennedy was shot as he walked through the kitchen in his Los Angeles hotel, the Ambassador. Shortly before, he had won the primary election for the Democratic candidacy for president. He died in the Good Samaritan Hospital 26 hours later. Sirhan Sirhan, a 24-hour Palestinian immigrant, was convicted of Kennedy's murder and is now serving a life sentence for the crime. His body was laid to rest near his brother's at Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C. His assassination spawned the tradition of protecting the presidential candidates being protected by the Secret Service.
Good evening. Dr. Martin Luther King, the apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement, has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee. Police have issued an all-points bulletin for a well-dressed young white man seen running from the scene. Officers also reportedly
on April 4th, 1968, Martin Luther King Jr., a prominent civil rights activist, was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. While standing on his balcony for his room at the Lorraine Hotel, James Earl Ray shot King. Ray was a fugitive from Missouri State Penitentiary and was later convicted to 99 years in prison for his assassination of King. King's assassination spawned riots all over the U.S. by African Americans and also caused much fear among the white population and government. 1968 harbored many famous black characters fighting for both civil rights and for Americans' freedom. Private First Class James Anderson, Jr., born January 22, 1947, was a United States Marine who posthumously received the Medal of Honor for heroism while serving in Vietnam in February of 1967. When his Medal of Honor was rewarded on August 21, 1968, he became the first African-American U.S. Marine recipient of the Medal of Honor. In December of 1966, Private Anderson arrived in the Republic of Vietnam, where he served as a rifleman in Company F in the 2nd Battalion. On February 28, 1967, he was mortally wounded. With blacks gaining more and more rights, it was only time before the government started passing laws to make these rights legal. While the Civil Rights Act of 1964 outlawed discrimination in the housing business, the Civil Rights Act of 1968 extended the rights of many discriminated against groups. The Civil Rights Act of 1968 prohibited discrimination concerning the sales, rental, and financing of houses based on race, religion, or national origin. This law set the standard for anti-discrimination and set forward a series of anti-discrimination laws and acts. Like any other presidential election year, both the Democratic and the Republican parties were to hold their own convention. However, in 1968, violence and chaos erupted at the Democratic convention. The convention followed the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., as well as the assassination of Robert Kennedy. It was held in Chicago so the mayor could show off the town. This, however, was not how things ended up. The police demonstrated violence when the protesters arrived. The violence was mass publicized, and even the reporters were roughed up a bit.
Apollo 7 lifted off only 2 3/4 minutes after the appointed.
During 1968, NASA was busy with a series of missions named Apollo. Apollo 7 and 8 set new standards for the space race, included many firsts in the world. Apollo 7 was the first manned shuttle mission after the previous crew died in a cabin fire, in which was later named Apollo 1. It was designed to orbit Earth for 11 days, in which they tested propulsion systems, life support, and other essential technology essential to a successful mission. The success of Apollo 7 led to the launch of Apollo 8, which aimed for the dark side of the moon. Apollo 8 was also responsible for many firsts in NASA and around the world. It was the first mission to leave from Kennedy Space Center and was also the first mission to leave Earth's orbit and enter the orbit of another celestial body.
This one day, we was out walking like always. And then, just like that, somebody turned off the rain and started coming.
1968 was a very busy year in Vietnam. From the Tet Offensive to Operation Commando Hunt, the U.S. troops were never bored. In the Tet Offensive, the People's Army of Vietnam in the north fought the Republic of Vietnam in the south. The North launched an operation to kill all command and leadership. This would weaken the government and possibly make it topple with one single blow. During the Tet Offensive, the Viet Cong launched an attack on the U.S. Embassy. They invaded the embassy and took all, but they never took the main chancery building. The objective was to destroy the U.S. Embassy, but it failed. In Operation Commando Hunt, a covert mission was launched. The objective of this mission was to prevent the movement of supplies and other support on the trail called the Ho Chi Minh Trail. This operation was highly successful. Another operation that happened in Vietnam during 1968 was Operation Sea Lord. Operation Sea Lord was a combined operation of the United States and the South Vietnamese. This mission was used to disrupt the supply line in and around the Mekong Delta. 1968 often gets overlooked in history, but is essential to the way America turned out today. If Kennedy hadn't been assassinated, he may have gone on to win the presidential election. If the Civil Rights Act had not been passed, we may have been sitting in a segregated society today. 1968 is essential for civil rights and other characteristics that are still present today.